Having a conversation with Governor George Allen, the one, the only, also a member of the U.S. Senate. And, well, he grew up around football. Dad, legendary football coach. And he's joining us right now on News Radio WRVA. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Rich, and good morning to all your listeners.
Absolutely. By the way, how's the knee doing?
It's getting better. Slowly but surely it's getting better. I walked 5.2 miles a couple of days ago, so that's getting there, and it's getting there.
Okay.
Making progress.
Well, as long as you're able to help with chores. I was just telling everybody that at my brother's house, he's told the kids it's the summer of chores. So want to make sure you're participating, because as I told you yesterday, when it comes to your wife, you, like most of us, outkicked your coverage.
Yeah, I sure have. My main chore is cutting the grass, and it's about 2 miles of walking with a push mower with it. But Susan does tons and tons of flowers and all sorts of stuff. I was just thinking, gosh, I wouldn't have blown those leaves away from there. Who cares? And so forth. But let me say this. I am a lucky dog. 40 years ago, we got married. We're going to have our wedding anniversary, 40th on Sunday at the Greenbrier. And she's just absolutely wonderful, thoughtful, thinks of all sorts of things that I wouldn't think of that are kind gestures to people. And we're going to go to the Greenbrier, where we went for a couple nights after our wedding. Our real honeymoon was really to the maritime provinces of Canada. I'd been to 43 states, and I wanted to get to all 50 states. And there were 7 states I hadn't been to: North Dakota and the 6 New England states. And I said, all right, we're going to go either North Dakota or these New England states. She said, let's go to the New England states. So we got through those little states, and then went up to Nova Scotia and New Brunswick and Prince Edward Island. That put bikes on the back of our vehicle, and it was just a wonderful, wonderful trip up there. And it's been a wonderful trip for 40 years.
I told you this.
Being Susan Allen's husband.
Exactly. I told you this before we'd ever actually formally met face to face. I was watching you give a talk, and you had a cup of coffee in your hand, and you needed somebody to grab it because they're going to take your picture. So I grabbed it. We had not formally met, and the woman next to me looked over, and I saw her, and I'm like, this is the most elegant woman I've ever seen in my entire life. She looks like Grace Kelly. She just has that regal look to her, and then I found out it was your wife.
Yeah, well, she is beautiful, and she is very kind and thoughtful, and our whole family is, and all of us are blessed with her in our life.
Absolutely. Okay, now enough about talking about your wife, because we can just keep going on and on. Let's talk football. I brought this up. I had John Canzano on, who's a national football writer, and he was commenting on what's going on with Nick Saban and all the coaches and the athletic directors that showed up in D.C., and I put out this warning. I grew up a Pac-12 fan. My conference no longer exists. You grew up an ACC fan, UVA, Virginia Tech. Your conference might be next if the Big 10 and the SEC get their way. They get the super conference, and there's going to be a lot less opportunities for college athletes, men and women, not just football, but across the way. The NCAA is not very well led, but they've turned to Congress.
To say the least.
They've turned to Congress. I mean, listen, I know we beat up on people at Capitol Hill all the time in the swamp, but my gosh, you have to really be going in the wrong direction if you turn to the United States Congress to try to find a path to salvation for you.
A lot of great observations there, Rich. Yeah, it's because they are poorly led, and you have there's several points to make here. Nick Saban, I admire coaches. He was a brilliant, tremendous, motivating, preparing his players coach at Bama, as well as LSU before he ditched out and didn't do very well in the NFL for that 1 year. But what you have is a bunch of hypocrites in these college administrators. Let's have your listeners understand the whole world of football. And football, out of all the sports, is the most unique. It's the number one sport. You look at any ratings, people watch sports, attend football games more than any other sport. Now, for the athlete's point of view and the business point of view, there's really no opportunity to play football other than the U.S. Yes, Canada has a league, but they limit the number of non-Canadians in the Canadian Football League. Unlike basketball, international, you can play right out of high school or maybe 1 year as far as the NBA is concerned. Baseball, international, can play right out of high school. Hockey, just in Canada, they have kids in high school already signed up for the draft, or soccer. So all these other sports, athletes in those sports can play and get paid. Now, the NFL has this restraint of trade, and they get away with this restraint of trade because of a collective bargaining agreement that says that you cannot sign or draft a player until they've had 3 years of college eligibility. Thus, colleges end up being, college football is a developmental league or a minor league that the NFL doesn't have to pay for. The colleges make literally billions of dollars off of these players who, to present themselves or showcase themselves and their talents, are risking injury. And football is a very dangerous sport in that regard. And I can attest to that, 2 knee injuries and why I'm having a knee replacement. But the point is these players ought to be paid like any other athlete in colleges who are making literally hundreds of millions, billions off of them. And the coaches are getting paid $10 million, $13 million, and so forth. So the colleges like this scheme. And what's happened is freedom has come about in college sports, especially in football. And the feudal system has been abolished, and they're trying to recreate a collusive system now that their serfdom has been abolished. Now, with all of this, with players being paid and all that, I think that's good. They ought to be paid. The thing where they need some guardrails is having these portals where they're transferring in the middle of a season. And what they need to do in the NCAA, they ought to have somebody from their law schools who knows how to write contracts and have a contract that says you're going to play the entire season. And if they say you don't want to transfer, make it a multi-year contract. That's what they do with the coaches, and then have performance clauses in it. The better you play, the more you get paid. And if you leave early, there are damages to get out of a contract. And that's one of the ways to handle it. But the constant transferring in the middle of a season or after spring ball and so forth, there should be some guardrails on that aspect of it.
Can I jump in with you, sir? I'm sorry.
Okay, go ahead.
Let me jump in with you.
Go ahead.
Here's what I'm also thinking, though. All of this is made, like you said, the fiefdom, the serfs, and the rest. It's upended the whole thing. But what I fear is we head to more of a professional model. I've been talking about Virginia Tech. If we get the Super League, 32 teams, maybe 40 teams, would the Hokies be left out in the cold? Virginia, 100%, would not make it into a Super League, being comparable to Alabama and Texas and USC.
Sure.
What happens to those campuses? JMU, they've done everything right, only to see every player that they want, that they brought in and flourished, and every coach ripped out from underneath them.
Yeah, that's the problem for places like Liberty and JMU. About anyone. And, if you look at the hierarchy, Rich, and sports and football, the NFL's at the top. The next level is the SEC and the Big Ten. And then the next level is the Big 12, the ACC. Then the next levels, of the Mountain West and all these other levels. And, they're developmental. If somebody does really good at ODU, a lot of them from ODU have gone to Virginia Tech, and some that were JMU went to other places. Some went to Indiana along with their coach, which is the point. Is you got free agency and freedom of contracting in this country. So don't forget the analogies that this is a free enterprise system, and so the NFL has I think a good competition model. But the reality is that it is very difficult where football doesn't mean as much in some places as it does in the SEC and some of the bigger Big Ten programs, and they end up with bigger TV contracts because people want to watch Tennessee and Alabama on the third Saturday in October every year, and they want to see the biggest outdoor cocktail party in Florida versus Georgia,
right?
LSU, Ole Miss, that game. Everyone will want to watch us. Texas A&M, or Texas against Oklahoma. These are just great, compelling games. And the reality is their stadiums hold 100,000 or more at Tennessee and Georgia, Alabama. Michigan's gigantic, Penn State, Ohio State. These are just Southern Cal. Some of these are just very big programs that people want to see their games. And the key revenue driver for all of this is TV revenue. So the ACC and Big 12 and Mountain West and various other conferences, just the Missouri Valley Conference, they simply don't get the revenues. That's just the free enterprise, free market system. And now you get Congress involved in this, and they're talking about
antitrust. So they're talking about giving them antitrust so they can.
Yeah, antitrust. But what they're trying to do is get the revenues that the SEC, the Southeastern Conference gets, which is a great TV package because they have great games that are exciting.
They're the top dog.
The top dog. And why should they share revenue with these quaint, smaller programs? And it's just reality that they're not going to give that up. So you may end up with I don't know what they'll end up with, but the point is that you got to realize that the structure of football is really derived as far as college football is derived because the NFL will not draft players out of high school. Now, it may be that there's not many. You can say you got to be more mature, you got to be stronger, this, that, and the other. Well, Herschel Walker was strong enough right out of high school to be playing pro football, or Earl Campbell and so forth. But
right.
I think it'll get worked out, but they're going to probably need to do something like the NFL, and that is a collective bargaining agreement to assure. And I'm not for collective bargaining for government.
No, see, I see it. I see it as
the private sector.
I see it as they're going to ask for antitrust because if everyone doesn't sign up for that collective bargaining agreement and not everybody joins the union, I just don't know how you negotiate all that. If you give them antitrust, then they can say, well, all these lawsuits can go kick rocks and we'll do what we want. And I think that's what they're looking for.
Yeah. You're exactly right, Rich. That's what they're looking for. But then now you're going to get Congress determining what is going to be fair. And I think these college administrators thinking that Congress is going to resolve this, if they do, it's stunningly surprising to me that if they could get this through this year. So they're looking for a Hail Mary type pass. So here, save us.
Yeah.
And then they're going to get complaining that Congress is micromanaging them. Well, if you go to Congress and ask them to give you antitrust, don't expect the senators and members of the House of Representatives not to have opinions and put in amendments for different aspects of it. So it may be that they have to get to antitrust, but it's not going to be. It's not going to be something that is going to recreate the serfdom that they long for and miss
back in the day. And again, my college professor, Dr. Richard Bilas, one of the most brilliant men I ever met, first thing he ever taught me, sir, was there's no such thing as a free lunch. So to the college administrators, everything comes with a price.
Well, yeah, and they're getting a big price. The colleges are making tons of money off of it. I'm talking about the successful, the SEC, Big 10, Big 12, ACC. Those folks are making tons of money off of it, and they make money off of basketball, and those teams pay for themselves. Ultimately, they're talking about all these non-revenue sports, and that's a whole nother approach.
We'll have to do that
they
next
need
time.
to make. Yeah, we ought to talk about that, and that's just too costly in these far-flung conferences to having teams that they're great sports and all that, but no one watches them,
and they don't generate money. They live off the largesse of college football.
Yeah. And they're taking these trips to, the Virginia team's going to play in California in these non-revenue sports. No one's watching it. The sports ought to be more, that it's a 2-hour bus ride. And they still have a national championship, but have smaller or closer in
to go from
regional conferences.
To go from Blacksburg to Cal for golf is something else. Sir, I got to run. Thank you so much. Congratulations. Have a wonderful weekend, and tell your wife congratulations on this 40th wedding anniversary. That's awesome.
It sure is. And thank you a lot, Rich. And we'll think of you once in a while.
You're the best. Thank you, sir. Maybe, hey, let me know. I'll come over and help you with that too.